Hi, friends. Welcome back to Live, Laugh, Love Life. I feel like I'm getting more and more sarcastic every time I say that because what is to love at this point? I'm kidding, but wow, it's crazy out there. Anyway, I hope you're doing well. I'm not doing so great. I'm sick. I've had a pretty boring weekend. Just been doing homework, college applications. I'm a little bit stressed, but it is what it is. Yeah, so I don't have very much energy today, but it's important that I do this, so we're going for it. Um, if you haven't heard, October is apparently OCD Awareness Month. It's a bunch of other things as well, but that is specifically important to me because I have OCD. I was diagnosed 3 years ago, but don't feel bad if you didn't know because I found out this year, this month, that October was OCD Awareness Month. But in honor of that, I thought it's still October. This episode will come out in October, so I might as well do an episode on OCD. I want to start off by saying that OCD is one of the more misunderstood mental illnesses, mental disorders, whatever you want to call it. I do think that it is very misrepresented in the media, and therefore people have a lot of misconceptions about it. So, I actually wanted to start by reading a speech that I wrote last year for my English class. It was a rhetoric and advanced language class. So, we did a lot of talking and stuff about how to write a speech, like these different strategies and stuff. So, some parts of it are going to sound a little bit corny or maybe a little out of place. It was because I was just trying to fit all the rubric requirements in the speech. So don't mind that. But I found the document. I had to search it up on Google Docs. I just wrote OCD speech and found it from last year. So I'm sure I just tossed the printed version. But I thought I did a pretty good job. Granted that I wrote it fairly last minute, as I usually do, but I feel like it is a good introduction. Okay, so it's titled OCD Stereotypes, Struggles, and Psychology. All right. Oh my gosh, I can't stand this mess. I'm so OCD. She doesn't have OCD, she's so disorganized. Believe it or not, these phrases are similar to many I've heard from the people around me throughout my life. Unfortunately, hearing such things from relatives, peers, and teachers alike has shown me that the misconceptions about OCD have spread far and wide in our society. In fact, maybe even some of you have believed them. That's why I'm standing here today, to inform you that OCD is so much more than just being neat. The basic umbrella definition for OCD is a disorder that causes those who live with it to experience intrusive thoughts that can be especially disturbing in nature, which then often triggers them to perform some sort of compulsion or repetitive action. According to the NIH, the World Health Organization lists OCD as one of the top 10 most disabling conditions. This is the reality for 1 to 3% of the global population. This is the reality for those who live with OCD. Only 2 years ago, this was my reality. Although I was diagnosed with OCD just 2 years ago, it's been affecting my life for much longer. I knew something was wrong, but how could I have known that OCD was to blame? How could anyone around me have known? With all the misrepresentation of it in our society, the media, the idea that I could have such a condition never even crossed my mind. I did struggle with perfectionism, but it went much deeper than adjusting my pencils in a straight line or making my shoelaces even. It took me so long to get help because I thought I was making everything up. It was all in my head, per se. I attribute this hesitation to my lack of knowledge about the real symptoms and effects of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Now that you know a little more about the condition, I'd like to bring your attention back to its history, its roots, its origin. OCD has long been miscategorized. Those who have it misunderstood, those who don't misinformed. The National Institute of Health claims that OCD was historically framed in religious terms as a moral failing or demonic possession. But it doesn't end there. Freud, known as the founder of psychoanalysis, used his infamous psychosexual theory to explain this obsessive neurosis, as he labeled it. Later, it was classified as an anxiety disorder before finally finding its place in the category of obsessive compulsive and related disorders, with conditions like body dysmorphia and hoarding. You may be wondering, so what? Why does the history of classification matter so much? The International OCD Foundation asserts that stigma is one of the biggest problems faced by people with OCD. And based on what I just told you, it's clear the stigma around OCD can be traced back to the very beginning of its discovery. Some of this stigma includes harmful ideas, such as the people who have it are crazy, that it's not a real condition or a big deal, and my personal favorite, that we're lucky to have it because it makes us organized. As silly as these things may sound, for someone who is seriously impacted by the effects of OCD, they can be extremely hurtful, frustrating, and isolating to hear. I hope you can now better understand that even little comments that hold misinformation about OCD can make this struggle just that much more difficult for those already struggling. I'm sure you all care about mental health and have your own experiences with it to some extent. So I urge you to take my words to heart, to go out into the world today with a new perspective, to think about what influences your beliefs, to be part of a more educated, more accepting society in this decade. Yeah, so there you go. That was my little speech. That sort of just outlines my point that, like, there's misconceptions about OCD, obviously. But now you're probably thinking, okay, now I know what it's not, but what actually is it? That's my next thing. Don't you worry, girl, I got you. So, okay, before we kick off me trying to tell you guys what the heck OCD actually is and the components of it and blah, 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 I have to give a little, warning, whatever, that obviously I'm not a doctor, I'm not a mental health professional, I'm simply a person who unfortunately has had to experience this disorder for, 10 years. You might be thinking, but Clara, didn't you say you were diagnosed 3 years ago? Yes. It takes most people with OCD 7 to 10 years to get diagnosed. So, yes. All right, moving on. Obviously, not a doctor, not a mental health professional. If you disagree with me, if you're listening to this and you hear something that's that's probably not right, please go look it up yourself. Please. Don't just believe me. Don't just believe me. That's weird. Don't do that. If there's something that you feel like you need to check, please go check it. Yeah, so to start out, the first main component of OCD is intrusive thoughts. And first, I want to clear up the difference between impulsive thoughts and intrusive thoughts because they are different things. I'm going to use my lovely resource, my little iPhone 12, to figure this out. Obviously, I think I know what it is, but we're gonna just look it up so that you guys can blame a source other than me. All right, intrusive versus impulsive thoughts. Here we go. This is from NOCD. Love them. Okay, so intrusive or impulsive thoughts. Impulsive thoughts. Some characteristics include sudden, often random urges or desires to do something, often followed by immediate, spontaneous action or a strong desire to do so. You have an urge to act on them quickly without fully considering the consequences. For example, I should dye my hair blue tonight, or I'm going to book a trip for this weekend. They're typically consistent with your actual desires and values. That is very important. Now listen closely for the differences in intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are unwanted and distressing thoughts or mental images. They do not reflect actual desires, and the thought of them coming true feels distressing and disturbing. That is extremely important. You do not want to act on them. The thought of doing so is often your worst fear. For example, What if I hit someone with my car? What if I snap and harm someone? This is extremely important. This is such an important component of OCD, and to understand the people going through it. They are ego dystonic. That means they are opposite to your real desires and values. That means for most people, if not all people with OCD, the things that our OCD latches onto, the thoughts that we have, the intrusive thoughts that we have, they go completely against who we are, our values, what we think, what we feel, what we believe. So that's why you get such extremely disturbing types of OCD, because obviously with good people, what's the opposite of good? Horrible. So all these people with OCD who have good values, good morals, all these intrusive thoughts are going to be the opposite of that, which is horrific, right? So that is very, very important to keep in mind whenever if someone ever shares an intrusive thought with you and they have OCD, you need to understand that, first of all, they know it's not logical. They know. They don't reflect who that person is whatsoever. And they're also not a choice. It's not a choice. It's intrusive thoughts. They're disturbing. They go against our values. We don't want them. That is the whole point. Okay, great. Now that that's cleared up, the second big component of OCD is compulsions. And I actually screenshotted this for a friend because we were talking about OCD. She wanted to learn more. She had some questions. These are handy dandy, screenshotted from TikTok. So take these with, again, like a grain of salt, some critical thinking. But we can just read this. Okay, so I'm going to first read the definition. It says, what is OCD? Obsessive compulsive disorder is a mental health condition where the person suffers from recurring intrusive thoughts, also known as obsessions, and engages in repetitive behaviors that they feel they need to do, called compulsions, to alleviate anxiety. So basically, these intrusive thoughts are things that our OCD latches onto that we obsess over. So I am going to skip some of the more really serious ones that are in here. But obsessions can present as intrusive and unwanted commands, urges, what ifs, feelings, sensations, intrusive thoughts, dreams, false memories, images, etc. Compulsions. These are the things that we do in response to these obsessions to try and alleviate the anxiety that these obsessions over the intrusive thought cause us. If that didn't make sense, I'm sorry. I don't know what other way to put it. It's confusing. Okay, so physical compulsion examples include reassurance seeking. So that would be an intrusive thought being like, oh, there's a hole in my pants and I can't see it. And no matter how many times I check, which is another one of these, checking doors, candles, lights, etc., anything that checking to make sure something is off, checking to make sure an alarm is set, checking to make sure a door is locked, checking to make sure you packed that thing you are convinced you're forgetting, those sorts of things. But back to my other example, say my intrusive thought is that there's a hole in the back of my pants and I can't see it. I'm obsessing over that, meaning it's all I can think about just over and over and over again. There's a hole in my pants. Everyone can see my butt. What are they going to think? Whatever, whatever, whatever. Reassurance seeking would be asking over and over and over again, hey, is there a hole in my pants? Is there a hole in my pants? Are you sure you can't see a hole in my pants? Can you check this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle? Yeah, so lovely. And there's also reassurance seeking, like when you have an intrusive thought and you obsess over it and convince yourself basically that you're a horrible person for having that thought, and it must be true and it must make you a horrible person that you had that intrusive thought. Then the reassurance seeking might be asking someone who loves you, like, hey, am I a bad person? Have I ever done anything like this? Like, blah, blah, blah. Do you think I would do this? Because your brain is telling you, oh yeah, you want to do that. You would love to do that. Meanwhile, you're like, holy crap, I would never do that. What the heck? But the intrusive thought and your obsession is your brain is telling you, yeah, you want to do that. That's disturbing as heck. You need to get that checked out, blah, blah, blah. And so your compulsion is like, hello, can someone please tell me this is not true? So, yeah, reassurance seeking, hand washing, cleaning, Googling, confessing, avoiding people, places, and situations, hoarding, tapping, checking, like I said, repeating actions. So, another thing people don't realize, a really common sort of OCD spiral is like you get an intrusive thought, you obsess over it, and what your brain is telling you is like if you don't open and shut this notebook 3 times, your whole family's gonna die. And you're just like open and shut, open and shut, open and shut. If you don't turn the light switch on and off 4 times, your best friend is gonna get murdered tomorrow. Light switch 4 times. Oh, you actually need to do it 3 more times or she's gonna get murdered today. Oh, 3 more times. Let's do it. It's like there are so many different ways it can present itself. It's impossible to even go over them all. Like, I'm just barely scratching the surface, but I'm just trying my best to get as much information out as quickly as possible. Okay, mental compulsions. Ruminating. So that's just all you can think about it. You're going back, you're thinking about it, you're replaying it in your mind over and over and over again. Checking thoughts and feelings. So I do this a lot. Also, thought stopping. How I think of it is just like instead of the sort of stream of consciousness that you would normally have, there's like an extra sort of piece of your brain, another voice that's like, oh, wait, what was that thought? And there's like this command in my head that's like, Clara, stop thinking that, stop thinking that, stop thinking that. Nope, we're not thinking that anymore. I'm like, since when can I just control my intrusive thoughts like that, babe? Like, you know that's not how it works, for real. So why are you even trying? But that's the point. Like, all of it is so extremely irrational, and yet it can consume you completely. And that's why it's such a serious disorder, because you can basically be convinced of anything and be convinced that you have to do anything to avoid whatever you're being convinced could happen if you don't do the thing, whatever that thing may be, those things being compulsions. So, again, ruminating, checking thoughts and feelings, thought stopping, neutralizing thoughts, repeating certain phrases. So, for example, if your intrusive thought is like, your dog's gonna get hit by a car today, and the only way that won't happen is if you say, please don't let my dog get hit, please don't let my dog get hit, please don't let my dog get hit. All of a sudden, that's all I'm saying all day long. Okay, and then there's compulsively praying, self reassurance, rituals, avoiding thoughts and feelings, counting, labeling thoughts, and so many more. Like, there's just so many more. So, yeah, it would be actually impossible to go over all of these. These are just like graphics I found on the internet that I feel like explain it fairly concisely and with like a large enough umbrella that you can sort of get the idea, get the picture that like this can affect people in so many different ways. It's 100% not a one size fits all situation. It can present itself in so many different ways. And like I said in my speech, it's only like less than 3% of the population that has it, that has been diagnosed. And I know people have heard of it, and there have to be some people who understand it. But I'm saying, even for me, like, part of the reason it took me so long to get diagnosed is because I had no clue what it was. Like, I just assumed it was what everyone else was saying. You wash your hands a lot, you wipe the counters down a lot, whatever. But there's reasons behind that. And that comes from some of the subtypes of OCD. For example, contamination OCD. So I think that's the one where you're like extremely concerned about like your health and getting sick, and if the raw chicken touched the counter, you have to wipe down the counter and then wash your hands and then spray it with chemicals and then wash your hands and then wipe it down again and then wash your hands, and you can't put anything on that counter for the next 3 weeks. these are some of the subtypes of OCD. I don't even know what all of these are. So I'll try to explain the ones that I think I understand or what my guess is that they would be, but please look it up if you're curious. If you think you might have it, obviously don't just listen to me and take everything I say as fact, because to be honest, it's probably not. But some OCD subtypes: harm OCD. So that is focusing on intrusive thoughts that have to do with harming other people or yourself. Relationship OCD, I'm guessing I'm going to take a wild guess and say that has to do with obsessing over the status of your relationships with others. And there might be like specific relationships, like maybe it's friendships or a romantic partner or your family members, whatever it might be. Sexual orientation OCD. So that would be like, in your heart of hearts, like, you know you're straight. And then all of a sudden your intrusive thought is just like, but what if you're actually gay? And then your obsession is like, oh my God, what if I'm gay? Like, what the heck? And now you're like thinking, what if I cheat on my husband because I think I'm gay? Blah, 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 blah. Like, and again, it's irrational, it's ego dystonic, and we know this. Once we get diagnosed, like, we know this. And yet still, it can just be like completely all consuming. It can take people's lives. Like, it is serious. I consider myself very lucky to have what I would say is a more mild case, a more mild version, but it can be really, really serious. So there's that. Just right OCD. So that is just things need to feel a certain way. Like, you're so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable in itself that you will do anything and everything to try and get out of that discomfort and back into your comfort zone, whatever that may be. So it's a lot of like, oh, that didn't feel quite right. We got to try it again. Like, we got to do this again because it didn't feel right. It was uncomfortable, or it's making me uncomfortable to think about how that didn't feel right. So now we have to do it again until it feels just right. Existential OCD, so I'm guessing that probably has to do with like, oh, what if there's a natural disaster tomorrow? What if there's a mass shooting in the mall I'm going to in a couple hours? What if, blah, blah, blah. What if the earth explodes in 2 minutes and all of a sudden my compulsion is calling every single person I know, telling them I love you because we're all about to die, just because my brain told me that, and there's no way. I don't know. It's not true for sure. I'll try my best to do as many of these. I talked about contamination already. Some of these are, false memory OCD. So that's like if you have a memory and then your intrusive thought is like, oh, but what if you made that memory up? What if that actually never happened? What if you're actually lying to everybody you've ever known? Blah, 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 blah. So that's a fun one, I'm sure. Gender identity OCD, similar to sexual orientation OCD, you're a woman, you're chilling, your intrusive thoughts like, but what if you're actually trans, and what if you actually want to be a man, and what if your whole life is a lie, and now you're going to be thinking about this for the next 10 years of your life. You're welcome. Some of these are like, not sure if I can say that on the internet. There are some of these that I don't even know what they are. I've never heard of them. I'll probably look them up later. Hit and run OCD, I've heard that's very common. It's like your intrusive thought might be like, what if I hit someone with my car and drove away and I just don't know it? I just don't remember. It's like, well, I don't know for sure. That's never happened. Real event OCD is just obsessing over and over and over again about a real event. That's something that's actually happened. What if it happens again? All the details of it. What if I misread this? For me, it's a lot of social situations, and I'm sure a lot of people who don't have OCD but maybe have anxiety, social anxiety, whatever, also do like the whole replaying a conversation in your mind, picking every little tiny thing apart. It's just like a more extreme version of that. Magical thinking OCD, that's basically, I also have that. I had to look it up though in order to even like discover that I had it. And my therapist and I, you might be wondering, like, Clara, how do you not know which ones you have? How do you not know that all of these are a thing? And I'll actually get into that later, like how I was diagnosed and everything. But yeah, magical thinking is basically it's like your brain, it makes you believe that your thoughts have some sort of actual substance and like supernatural powers. It's sort of like believing in manifestation for like every single intrusive thought. Like if my intrusive thought was, oh, my house is going to burn down while I'm not there. The magical thinking OCD part of it was basically my brain convincing me that because I thought that, it is now actually going to happen. I think. Please don't quote me on that. Please, guys, just do your own research. I'm not an expert. I'm sorry, you guys. I just looked over at my computer and my lighting really sucks. So you might want to listen to this episode because I don't know how any of you are watching this. That's crazy. Anyway, it's sort of like a sorry not sorry thing because I won't change my location. I won't. All right, I am at 42 minutes, so we're actually going to make this 2 parts. I know I said I would never do 2 parts again, but that's what we're going to do because I'm not editing another 2-hour episode. It's not happening. So, have a great week, everyone. I'll see you right back here. I'm going to be same time, same place, same outfit. You're going to be a whole week later. But I'll see you next time. And yeah, have a great week. Sorry to leave you on a cliffhanger, but I will talk about everything else I wanted to talk about next week. Bye.